This is one of my favorite shirts. Oh, I dropped the camera. This is one of my favorite shirts by far. In this video, I'm going to be covering the fire piston and the diesel engine. And thanks for watching. To begin, we must acknowledge the fire piston. Its exact antiquity is unknown. It's been around for a while. We know that it was invented by Southeast Asian, Austronesian people for fire starting, using rapid air compression. It is simply a cylinder with an airtight piston and a piece of flammable tinder which is placed in a cavity at the piston head. And it has the ability to compress air to produce high temperatures. It represents one of the earliest practical applications of adiabatic compression principles. People still use it today. This is a video demonstrating the fire piston. It's a relatively simple device. The thermodynamic principles involved in this are very interesting. Simply put, this equation is all that needs to be acknowledged. So very clearly, a process without heat transfer to or from a system is called adiabatic. And this is because compression is so rapid, there's not enough time for heat to dissipate. That is why Q is 0. That is why this equation simplifies to this, where P is the external pressure and delta V is the change in volume, which is negative during compression. Meaning the double negative produces a positive and the change in internal energy of a system increases. No heat exchange occurs because it's a rapid compression process. These same physics principles are fundamental to internal combustion engines. The fire piston was an early demonstration of converting mechanical energy to heat energy, which is interesting because the steam engine takes heat energy and converts it into mechanical energy. Both the fire piston and diesel engine both rely on adiabatic compression. The air is compressed so quickly that heat cannot escape. Rudolf Diesel observed Carl von Linde demonstrate a fire piston during a lecture. Diesel recognized that rapid compression could ignite fuel without sparks, which is extremely important to understand. All the fire piston requires is a cylinder, an airtight piston, and a piece of flammable tinder, which could just be like cotton. These are the auto ignition temperatures of certain substances. And you can see that leather parchment is right here. Diesel is between leather, parchment, and paper, which is the lowest temperature at which it spontaneously ignites in a normal atmosphere without an external source of ignition. And the fire piston is capable of raising temperatures to over 210 degrees Celsius, which is the auto ignition temperature of diesel. Diesel adapted the fire piston's adiabatic process to compress air in cylinders. Rudolf Diesel filed his groundbreaking patent in 1893. So comparatively, the fire piston uses tinder combustion, roughly a 25-to-1 compression ratio. The diesel engine uses fuel injection into hot air with a lower compression ratio and combines adiabatic compression with timed fuel injection. Because instead of tinder, like cotton in a fire piston, you're instead using diesel fuel. And Rudolf Diesel effectively industrialized what was already understood with the fire piston. What Diesel achieved was significant historically. And these are my sources for this section of the video. Rudolf Diesel was a German engineer, born in 1858, who studied thermodynamics under Carl von Linde. Diesel envisioned an engine that didn't require a spark ignition like gasoline engines. In 1892, Diesel completed his work on a new type of internal combustion engine. Diesel published Theory and Construction of a Rational Heat Engine in 1893. And at the time, steam engines were quite inefficient. Now, this is how a diesel engine actually works. Here's a good animation showing a diesel engine in operation. You can see that it's a 4-part cycle: air intake, press, fuel injection and combustion, and exhaust. The important thing to recognize is that when the piston compresses the air in the chamber, that is when the fuel is injected and combustion occurs due to adiabatic compression. Here you can see the 4-stroke cycle for a gasoline engine, which has a spark plug. This is in part why diesel engines are so reliable. Where in a gasoline engine, if anything goes wrong with the spark plugs, your car won't run. The first prototype in 1893 was unsuccessful and dangerous to operate, nearly killing diesel. There was a lot of skepticism around whether this would be as efficient as diesel claimed. The Motor 250-400 is the first functional diesel engine. This is what the starting of a diesel engine looks like. And what it did was it proved the idea that you could use adiabatic compression to achieve combustion in a cyclical nature. So in February 1897, diesel achieved success. And as we saw earlier, that 4-stroke engine process, it had a very high level of efficiency. Here are some of the technical specifications of the actual prototype. Peanut oil was demonstrated as a viable fuel at the 1900 Paris World Fair. There were many innovations that came along with this prototype. The direct fuel injection and the use of compression rather than spark plugs was massive. This is a part of the reason why, even today, diesel engines are considered more reliable than gasoline engines. Shortly after this prototype, the first commercial diesel engines were installed. It did not take long from the first successful diesel prototype to the first diesel-powered ship and the first diesel-powered locomotive. Today, diesel engines are in everything: cars, trucks, ships, power plants. Here are my sources for this section of the video. The diesel engine is not without its limitations. Diesel engines produce exhaust, which is known to be harmful to human health. And as we can see with this cycle, the exhaust cycle represents the unburned fuel. The fuel is not fully combusted. Particulate matter and nitrogen oxides contribute to air pollution. Diesel exhaust is known to be harmful to humans. As far as the limitations with efficiency go, we're starting to see an upper limit. Turbocharging increased efficiency considerably. A turbocharger is a forced induction device that is powered by the flow of exhaust gases. Forced induction is used to increase the density of the intake air. Even the most modern and efficient engines have only reached about 53% efficiency. Similar with the steam engine, we're now seeing the limits of the diesel engine. And depending on how you go about trying to increase efficiency, that may increase emissions at the same time. It starts to become not worth it. The Volkswagen emission scandal is an unfortunate example of a corporation lying about diesel emissions. And the people working at Volkswagen designed a system to hide the real emissions of their vehicles. They intentionally programmed a system which activated during laboratory emissions testing, which caused the vehicle's nitric oxide output to meet US standards. But in reality, the vehicles emitted up to 40 times more nitric oxide in real-world driving. To be clear, there is no such thing as clean diesel. So as efficiency has increased with the diesel engine, we are starting to see an upper limit. And just like the steam engine, like we saw with the Doble Model E steam car, we're starting to see alternative technologies become more competitive as diesel approaches its limits. Which is why the Model E steam car is so fascinating, because that was the pinnacle attempt to squeeze out the maximum amount of efficiency and power out of a steam engine. Nonetheless, the diesel engine is still very much so in use today. Because it's so reliable, modern society would struggle to function without it. Over time, moving forward, the trend is that we are going to move away from the diesel engine towards electric alternatives. You can achieve efficiencies over 90% using electric motors, which is something I may consider covering in a future video. So stay tuned. And these are my sources for this section of the video. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask in the comments. And thanks for watching.